Where Obscurity Sways is the much anticipated third full length album from St. Petersburg, Russia based death metal band Pyre. We could call them an old school death metal band in general. They're no longer so focused on Swedish death metal sounds, but when they started out, that's all they really did was an autopsy and I would say early entombed sounding thing, and they were pretty good at it. They're probably one of the better bands I've ever heard that were emulating the early Swedish death metal Stockholm area sound, and their contemporaries at the time were bands like Mame and Morbus Chron, especially the first record from that band. They didn't go as weird with it when they hit their Human Hecatomb debut LP. In fact, they leaned into more of the nihilist side, a little bit more thrashing, a little bit more emergent and quick with their ideas, and that made them good bedfellows with bands like Entrapment, who had also mastered that sound. They did some splits together. I think the love for Clandestine was obvious on that record, and matching them up with Interment for a split made sense. And I think if I was going to sum up the impact of the band over their first two records, it's kind of like what made bands like Repugnant and Entrapment so good about taking the energy of Nihilist and blitzing it with thrash or just more riffs, more ornate ideas. It really served them well. What Chained to Ossuaries did back in 2020 was give it atmosphere. It gave it a different layering that was just masterful. It's this incredible record that was a peak for the band, and it was such a big record that it was going to be hard to follow it up no matter what. And considering the circumstances of a band in Russia over the last 5 years, it's not like they've had money pouring in and chances to tour and things to do that would help perfect their craft beyond that. So the fact that we've gotten any songs from the band over the last several years is impressive, and this record is impressive in that right. What we did get was a preview of what this album would be with a single, Pestilential Fumes, and that kind of gave us a sense that they're no longer really working in between different realms of Swedish death metal, and now they're becoming a little bit more expanded in the way that maybe like Skeletal Remains had started out, with a sound that was close to Pestilence and Asphyx, not only for the vocalist Tim Knox sounding quite a bit like Martin Van Drunen, but also for the movement of their pieces as they continue to develop their sound. We'll get a sense for that sound here with a clip, and then I'll talk more about what made this record special and how different it is from the previous one. The dark river flows to paradise as a prey, the tide of nerd. So the note given up front right away is the production value is insane. It's not the big, loud, stupid treatment you would get from like a new Entrails record or something like that. But it is dynamic, it is crystal clear, and it is big sounding. But it also, they start out with a song that really sounds like it was influenced by early Sepultura in the way that it thrashes out its first couple of riffs and then sticks to that riff by riff action throughout the rest of the record. The general focus of this band has always been on the riff, but it's always come from a different point of view. And I feel like this record maybe has a little bit of the Morgoth and Pestilence feeling to it overall, which allows them to play with pace more often. In messing around with pace and movement in these ways and finding a more dynamic record, I really felt like this album reminded me of Merciless's Abject Offerings just a little bit in the way that they developed their riff craft for the two guitars, and some of the melodic guitar work, which is kind of rocking in the way that it moves, also touches upon the signature of Dismember just a little bit. That's always been, I think, one of their main influences, unless I'm mistaken. But with this new drummer, I feel like they're not pushing the complexity as much as the previous record did, but they're definitely kicking around some new ideas in terms of pacing. And I think being able to play with more pace has me referencing Consuming Impulse and other records like that along the way. To cut it short, really, this record reminds me of a lot of the classics in the way that it is pieced together, in the way that it is performed, and the personality that they push forward through it. It does feel like this is a sincere love of old school death metal, not an imitation of it, and it is referential in some points, but it's not old school death metal by numbers that we've been getting for so long, since the late 2010s. intense. And in that sense, this is a superior band. For me, this was just an authentic release. It's from a band that have always carried that authentic sound. I think I still prefer their second album overall, but I do think that this is a step into a bigger, better direction overall, because the production value is something that are worth upkeeping. I think the riffs are unstoppable from front to back, and I think this is an incredible record that is very memorable for me as someone who loves traditional death metal. And it's not just about reminding me of the classics, it's about kind of continuing to add to the voice of Pyre, which I appreciate quite a bit. Check that out for yourself. For me, everything about this release was just more characterizing, so that was a very high recommendation from me. But listen to it for yourself on the 31st when it releases, and see what you think. Coils of the mind, a monster could be a